If you have been getting some hip pain and you're starting to wonder, am I getting a bit of hip arthritis? In this video today, I'm going to give you 5 early symptoms or 5 early signs to look out for to find out if you might be getting hip arthritis. Hi, my name is Alex Blazewski. I'm a physiotherapist with over 21 years experience working in private practice with people over 40. So the sign number 1 you're going to look out for is the location of pain. So if you're getting pain in the hip, and if you're getting it more sort of in the groin area, so just to the side of the center, kind of right in that sort of front groin area, there's a higher chance you might be getting knee arthritis. The reason why is that most of the time, pain from the hip joint tends to refer into the groin, into the front. So a lot of people think that if you have a sore hip joint, you tend to get pain in the hip, on the side of the hip. In most cases, this is actually not true. In most cases of hip arthritis, you tend to get pain right here in the groin. Now, further down the track, some people will also get pain on the outside as well. But more commonly in the beginning, you tend to get that sort of pinching, jamming sensation right sort of in that groin area right here. So this is the sign number 1. If you're getting consistent pain in the front hip area, then there's a higher chance that you might be getting hip arthritis. Now, by the way, guys, in this video, I'm not trying to diagnose your pain. It's just to give you some general information. If you are suspecting that you might be getting hip arthritis, that might kind of point you in the right direction, but you still absolutely need to go and see your health professional to find out for sure. Okay. Now, so the sign number 2 is getting morning stiffness. Okay, so you might be waking up in the morning and you feel like it takes a while for your hip to loosen up. It just feels like you've got a bit of a limp for a while, and then after about 15 to 20 minutes of walking, it kind of loosens up, warms up, and it starts to feel better. Now, I call it the warm-up effect. Okay, so if you have the warm-up effect first thing in the morning, then you probably have you may have a bit of arthritis. You may get the same sort of sensation if you've been sitting down for a while, if you've been staying still, and then again after a period of time of resting, when you get up, you still have that stiffness that kind of warms up as you start moving. Okay. Now, sign number 3, you may notice restriction or stiffness in certain direction, restriction of movement in certain directions in your hip joint. So the 2 specific directions you need to be keeping an eye on is your ability to be able to bend your leg up. So we call it hip flexion. So it doesn't matter if you're standing or lying down. So if you're starting to find that, like if you starting have difficulty getting lifting your knee up, and when you might notice it is when you sit down on a chair and you try to do up your shoelaces or put your shoes on or socks on. If you find that ability to bend down and bend your hip, particularly past 90 degrees, if you find that that's starting to become difficult and you're starting to get a bit of jamming kind of discomfort particularly in that same groin area that I just talked about, then that could be a sign that you might be getting a bit of arthritis. Now, the second movement to look out for is your ability to bring your knee across the chest and twisting a little bit, okay? So that's a less common, that's not the sort of movement you do a lot of. We call it internal rotation. So that one is also, if you're starting to feel a bit of pain or a bit of restriction, how far you can take your leg that way, then you may also, it might indicate that you might be getting a bit of arthritis as well. Now, sign number 4 is getting sort of a catching or grinding sensation in deep inside your hip joint. So particularly when you're weight bearing or when you're up on your feet, you're walking, you might be standing, you might be sort of turning a little bit. And if you find that you're getting that sort of a bit of a catch deep inside the hip joint, then again, like it pretty much it tells you there's some uneven surfaces inside the hip joint, which is what happens when you get arthritis. You get sort of almost like a bone on bone or sandpaper on sandpaper type of feel. So if it catches and then it kind of releases, it gives you a very distinct sensation. Sometimes you can even hear it. So that may be a sign of hip arthritis as well. Now, final sign number 5 is, again, it's to do with the pattern of pain. So you might be doing an activity. So you might be going for a big walk. You may not necessarily get pain while you're doing the activity. So you may not get much pain when you're walking, but immediately afterwards, when you rest, you may actually notice more pain, or sort of like a deep-seated ache in that sort of groin area after the activity. Okay, so not so much while you're doing it, but afterwards. So it pays to actually keep a diary. If you're noticing that this is the pattern you're getting, it's a good idea to keep a diary of you're trying to find out which activities are actually irritating your hip the most. Okay, so once you keep a diary, you can actually start to draw patterns, and then you can actually see a big picture. Okay, so hopefully these tips have helped you. You kind of, maybe it points you in the right direction. But again, if you're suspecting you may be getting a bit of hip arthritis, I would encourage you to go and speak to your doctor, your health professional, so they can properly diagnose it and then offer you some treatment choices.